This video contains spoiler for the main story of Endwalker. The 12, part of everyday life in Eorzea, and yet the lore about them is very obscure. A mystery as old as the game itself. Since the upcoming Alliance raid, Myths of a Realm will hopefully shed some light on them, I thought this would be a good time to see what we already know and talk about some theories. The more we learned about the game world, the less sense the 12 and their lore made. I really started to think they aren't more than just myths, but then one line of image changed everything.
The true identities of the 12, for instance.
This means there has to be more to them, right? And so began my research.
Yet, after all, why not? Why shouldn't I?
To get the basic stuff right out of the way, the 12 are the 12 gods of Eorzea. Every city-state of Eorzea has a guardian deity. One of the gods the city-state is especially dedicated to. But the people can also choose one for themselves, and even the player gets to choose one at character creation. Their influence is ever so present. There are everyday phrases like "by the 12" or "curse the 12". Each of them is associated with a month of the Eorzean calendar. Each of them commands one of 6 elements together with another deity, and each elemental pair is tied to one of 6 constellations of the night sky. The 12 consist of Allthic, the Keeper, surveyor of change and space, and god of time; Nofika, the Matron, tender of soils and harvests, and goddess of abundance; Nalthal, overseer of the underworld, and god of commerce; Azeyma, the Warden, keeper of the sun and goddess of inquiry; Rhalgr, the Destroyer, breaker of worlds, god of destruction; God the Builder, purveyor of architecture and industry, and god of the arts; Oshon the Wanderer, ruler of the mountains, and god of wanderers and vagrants; Llymlaen, the Navigator, watcher of the seas and goddess of navigation; Nimea the Spinner, watcher of celestial bodies and goddess of fate; Aliak the Scholar, ruler of rivers and wisdom, and god of knowledge; Menfina the Lover, keeper of the moon and goddess of love; Heloni the Furry, mover of glaciers and goddess of war. With that done, let's explore their origin a little bit. Like with real religions, people told many different stories of it. In years of study, the Sharlayan astrologian and theologian Lufon compiled it to a single definitive creation myth. In the beginning, there was only a thing called the world. From it emerged the first of the 12, Allthic. He brought time and rate in the world and defined so the land and the firmament. After some time, another goddess emerged from the world, Nimea. But she was just a baby, and the only thing she did was crying until there was a lake. Allthic did the only responsible thing he could do as the only adult and took her under his wing, cared for her so she could grow up to a healthy woman, and then made babies with her. Their children were Azeyma and Menfina, and with them came day and night. After some more time, Thaliak emerged from the world. He took some water from the lake of Nimea's tears and transported it to the far corners of the realm. That's how rivers were created. Azeyma and Thaliak had 2 daughters, Llymlaen, who expanded the lake into the world sea, and Nofika, who filled the world with life. Then Oshon, another god, appeared. No one knew where he came from. He was just there. Where he wandered, mountains rose from the ground, and with mountains, wind started to blow. With all these gods doing their thing, it was a time of great chaos. To balance it out, Nimea picked a comet from the sky and gave it life. His name was Rhalgr, and his task to destroy the excess creation of the other gods. Shortly after, 2 more gods emerged from the world, God and Heloni. With order just restored, Nimea wanted to keep them in check, and so made them disciples of Rhalgr. Since God was a builder, he wasn't really happy about that, and spent most of his time with Thaliak, who taught him about crafting. Heloni, however, was more content with Rhalgr's teaching, but grew restless and joined Oshon on one of his journeys. To test their strength, she would challenge every single creature they encountered, which in turn angered Nofika. Feeling responsible, and to calm Nofika, Oshon summoned magma from one of his mountains. This magma took the form of the final god, Nalthal. Don't ask why, just accept it. Nalthal oversaw the souls of the dead and provided them with a peaceful afterlife. And with creation complete, they created and retreated to the 7 heavens. With all we know about the theories, most of this doesn't make any sense. We don't know what of all this stuff has a symbolic meaning and what's just made up. It sounds like they created the world. This would mean they date back way before Armorworld. But there is neither a mention about them in Emmett's Illusion, nor in Elpis. The Ascians refer to them as your 12, and the first doesn't seem to have any records about them either. Not even in the ruins of Ronka, which would mean they appeared after the Sundering. But the world was already created at this point, wasn't it? It could be that they were just a bunch of exceptional dudes people told stories about, and with time attributed them things they didn't do. Still, there are some interesting points we should take note of. While many things in it may be made up, Oshon stands out. Why did he just appear? He wasn't born, nor created, nor emerged he from the world. It is kinda specific to be just a coincidence. And the other point of interest is the world itself. What is it? Time travel? Teleportation? Interdimensional travel? Summoning? Creation magic? Is it still around? Let's hope the upcoming Alliance raid will shed some light on it. According to some stories, they ruled Eorzea in the First Era, and Mughals were their servants. They helped mankind settling down in Eorzea and teach them how to survive. Some say they left because they were impressed by their resourcefulness and resilience. Others say they left because the tribes started war with each other. They disappeared right before or with the first calamity. Apparently, this was the time when the Mughals started to migrate to the Twelveswood, and the legend of Mughal the 12 started. Early Alec worshipped them in the Third Era, but stopped it as they started to conquer the world. With their conquest of Miracidia, they discovered a Sephiroth temple with the symbols of Azeyma. Curious about how a symbol of one of the 12 found its way to Miracidia, they transported the temple to Azizla. It's weird, the 12 are only worshipped in Eorzea. Why is there a temple with Azeyma's symbol? First people theorized that there might be a connection between the Roaring Triad and the 12, but a member of the dev team shed some light on this matter. He concluded that the Miracidian symbol for the sun and the Allagan symbol for Azeyma had the same origin, and that countless years in the past, that symbol made its way to several different regions across the globe. With the advent of the 5th era, proofs of 12 worship becomes more apparent. The Sanctum of the 12 is constructed, and through the Wanderer's Palace we know that the city-state of Nim worshipped Oshon. Approaching the 7th calamity, the marks of the 12 suddenly appeared throughout Eorzea. It is later revealed that it was Louis Roar's doing. He used the faith of the people to invoke a part of their power and stop Bahamut. After this little history lesson, we need to take a look at two gods in particular. First we have Rhalgr. There's a theory that he is somehow connected to Ramuh, the primal of the Sylphs. Ramuh is a little bit weird if you think about it. He isn't as aggressive as the other primals, he doesn't want to suppress other races, and he had a Crystal of Light he gifted us, an item only the champion of Hydaelyn should be able to obtain. In an interview with Gamer Escape, Koji Fox said that Ramuh is different from other primals, and that he knows much about the past, and that there is a reason for all that. Even the second lore book theorizes about his relationship to Rhalgr. This could mean that this is an instance of one of the 12 summoned as primal or primal-like entity. Let's talk about Azeyma. We already covered her connection to Miracidia, but there's also the Azim step, named after Azim the Dawnfather, the sun god of the Aura. Not only are their names quite similar, there's also again the sun theme. If you look at the explanation the dev member gave us for the Miracidia symbol, it should ring some bells, because there is one person who is known to travel to distant places and leave lasting impressions, Azem, and his constellation stone bears the symbol of the sun. Does this mean we, or rather our past self, is related to the 12? Maybe, but don't forget that Azem is only a title. We know Hydaelyn had it before us.
Vanar is her name, and she is the previous Azem.
Also there is Emmett, who apparently traveled the world with our constellation crystal after the Sundering.
As the bearer of Azem's crystal, you may consider your duty to see at least that much. I certainly did.
It's very likely that Azem is one way or another involved with the 12, but there are still so many pieces missing, the upcoming Alliance raid will hopefully fill in. For now, let's take a look at two popular theories about who the 12 could be. Given the fact that they are only ever mentioned on the standard source in Eorzea, it's not that far-fetched that they are somehow connected to the Ancients. We can assume that Amurot was in Eorzea, since Norvrand seems to be the Eorzea equivalent of the first, and this is the place where we found its ruins. Most of the ancient schemes seem to be focused there too. If you think about how much Eorzea affected the whole planet, other places must feel like this. Which brings us to the first theory. The 12 are actually the Ascians of the Convocation who summoned Zodiac. Even though only 3 of them are powerful enough to be considered godlike, we have seen that standard Ascians are still more powerful than most of the normal people. But why should they help the wandering tribes to settle in? Emmett told us as much in Shadowbringers.
Look at me. I have lived 1,000 of your lives. I have broken bread with you. Fought with you, grown ill, grown old, sired children, and yes, welcomed death's sweet embrace. For eons have I measured your worth and found you wanting. Too weak and feeble-minded to serve as stewards of any star.
Maybe they weren't as set on undoing the Sundering at first, or they needed to prepare the human races, so they would be able to survive the coming calamities and rebuild after to repeat the cycle, and they would be in a perfect position to influence them and trigger the first calamity. But wait, there are 12 gods, but 13 Convocation members. Well yes, but actually no. Night Thrall is a twin god, which means he consists of 2 gods, which would mean the 12 are in fact 13 gods instead of 12, so this could work. Still, Azem doesn't really fit in the theory, and we don't really have an explanation for Shon or Ramuh either. The second theory claims not the Convocation, but allies of Venar became the 12. They could even be unsundered. Emmett might have said there are only 3 unsundered ones, but we don't know if this is true. In the recent live letter it was confirmed that Hydaelyn gave Emmett a way to escape the sundering. She could have done the same thing with other ancients. We know Azem wasn't part of them, but he or their first incarnation could have joined them. Maybe Hydaelyn wanted them to guide mankind onto the right path, and support them until they were able to stand on their own legs. For both theories it stands to reason how much sense it would make to have yet another story about the ancients. So in the end, the 12 could be no more than just a group of adventurers Azem assembled. Or maybe something entirely different. Even though we have no clear answer yet, hopefully this video could give you some new insights in the 12 and their weird lore. And maybe soon we will learn more about them.